Greetings and salutations. Thank you for lending an ear to The Voice of the Times this Saturday, January 23, 2021. For today's editorial, new USTR should be handled with caution. The trade policy of the departed Trump administration in the US is generally acknowledged to have been disastrous, not only for the US itself, but for the stability of global trade in general. How the new Biden administration manages trade relations is something that will need to be closely watched. The US President's selection for the important post of US Trade Representative or USTR has significant implications, both for the Philippines' bilateral trade relationship with the US and for the broader global trade environment. The Trump trade policy, which can be charitably described as antagonistic nationalism, did more harm than good for all concerned. The US trade position is worse now than it was 4 years ago, as the policy moves had largely the opposite effect than what was intended. Despite Trump's claiming victory in the trade war he started against China, the US trade deficit with the latter is actually much larger now than it was at the beginning of 2017. Trade disputes provoked with other countries, most notably Europe, have also damaged overall relations and caused significant difficulties for some major US sectors such as the automotive industry. Trump's trade policy also seriously weakened global frameworks such as the World Trade Organization or WTO, and his withdrawal of the US from the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP, one of his first official acts upon taking office, virtually scuttled that promising trade pact and accelerated the finalization of the competing China-dominated Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. As it concerns the Philippines specifically, although the Trump policy orientation did not ruin the reasonably good trade relationship between the Philippines and the US, it almost certainly limited any potential for its expansion, to the detriment of the Philippines. Despite these realities, however, the ostensibly pro-US labor and industry orientation of the Trump trade policy did and continues to have support among a significant part of the US population and business community, which leaves Biden facing a difficult balancing act. He will have to undo the policy decisions that were objectively harmful, while not antagonizing those who view any form of globalization with fear and revulsion. To manage that delicate task, Biden has selected Catherine Tai as the new USTR. The choice of Tai as USTR could not send a more obvious message about the Biden administration's intentions than if they were displayed on a billboard. For several years, Tai has served as the chief legal counsel of the powerful Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives. And prior to that, she was the chief China enforcement officer at the office of the USTR, a job that, among other things, involved arguing US dispute settlement cases against China at the WTO. Tai is also a fluent Mandarin speaker. The policy implications of Tai's appointment are that while the US under Biden will clearly seek to resolve differences through discussion rather than confrontation, two of the basic characteristics of Trump's trade policy, being worker-centric and maintaining a position of competition rather than cooperation with China, will be retained. These are, after all, broadly supported by the traditional blue-collar base of Biden's Democratic Party, regardless of the attention given to the party's more progressive wing, and cannot be ignored if he wishes to make progress in implementing his policies. As far as it concerns the Philippines, this policy orientation may force us to at times choose between siding with China or the US, particularly in view of linkages between conventional trade in goods and the trade in labor. Either workers going to the US or US firms such as BPOs setting up shop here. The latter in particular may prove troubling, as Tai has indicated a preference for subsidies and incentives to encourage reshoring of US jobs. Our leaders have enjoyed 4 years of interacting with a US government that was neither particularly competent nor complicated. But the designation of a new USTR is one sign that is changing quickly. The relationship between the two countries can still be beneficial, and we expect it to be. But the Philippines will have to exercise a great deal of caution and careful thought in dealing with the US on trade and other matters as well. And that's the editorial for Saturday, January 23, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to our digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and listen to The Voice of the Times.